Hello, it's Mrs. Green, and we're going to talk about adding integers with this lesson. So I'm going to start with the rules for adding integers, and then we have one other definition that we'll put in our key information. So you should have already added to your table of contents, and then started a new page. And you should have already written down section 1, which is prior knowledge. So whatever you already knew about adding integers is already in your notes, and now we're ready for the key information. So I'm going to jump to the next screen and talk about the rules when you have integers that have the same sign. So that can be two possibilities, of course. You can have numbers that have both positive, which I don't even think we have to think too much about. You add them up and you take the common sign, which we know is both a positive sign. Or you could have numbers that have both negative. And again, the rule is going to be, let's write it out, add the numbers, add the absolute value of the numbers. So in the case of these negative numbers that I've written for the -5 and the -7, we're going to add 5 and 7. We're going to get 12. And then you take the common sign. Take the common sign. So whichever sign the two numbers have in common. In my first problem up here, they had a positive sign in common, so I don't put the plus sign in front of the 10. It's understood that there's a plus sign in front of the 10. But here with the -5 and the -7, we have to make that into a -12. So the first step is to add the two numbers together, the absolute values of the numbers. So you're kind of ignoring in this problem, this second problem I wrote, you're ignoring the minus signs. You're adding the absolute value of the 5 and the 7 together, and then you're going back and you're looking at the common sign and taking the common sign. So that's how you do it. You might have other rules, thinking about other rules in your head, but this is how I'm going to explain it when we talk about it in class. It seems very simple now, but when we get into more difficult algebra and we have lots of negative signs floating around, you're going to want to remember, you're going to want to go way back and remember your integer rules. So we're going to look at these rules over and over again when we do decimals and fractions and then when we start our algebra. All right, moving on to the rule for, so you have some more information in your key information here. You have 3 things to write. The rule I just wrote about integers with the same sign. Now you have a rule for integers with different signs. So this is a little bit different rule. And the rule, let's look at an example. It's the best way to illustrate it, I think. So if you've got, oh, I don't have to write that. I'm not going to write the positive for, so let's say it's a -9 and then a 5. So notice that these two numbers have different signs in my example. And the rule there is subtract. So you're going to use subtraction, subtract, or use subtraction. The smaller number, you always have to subtract whenever you're subtracting. You cannot subtract the bigger number from the smaller number. It's impossible. So you're always going to subtract the smaller number, that's a number sign, from the larger. So subtract the smaller number from the larger number. Then you'll get some kind of result. Then you go back to your original problem and you take the sign of the larger number. So you take the sign of larger number. So in this case, I have to look back at my original. My 9 is my larger number, and it has a minus sign, so I have to subtract 5 from 9. And I get 4, and I have to look at my original problem and see which sign the larger number has, and the larger number is 9. It has a minus sign, so my answer is -4. So it's 2 steps. Use subtraction, and then figure out what the sign is. In the other problem, we used addition, and we used the common sign. So 2 completely different, somewhat different rules. The third thing I want you to write in your key information. So far, you don't have to write these example problems. I have other example problems for you. You could just write down the rule in your key information. So far you have 2 rules in your key information. The third piece of information I want in your key information is what's known as the inverse property of addition. And you can see from this picture that I found on the internet, this is a really good example using numbers of what the inverse property of addition tells us. It tells us when we take a number and we add its opposite, so this is its opposite, whenever you take a number and add its opposite, you get 0. So that's what the inverse property of addition says. It says a number plus its opposite, that's an S, is equal to 0. Those are my words. If you want a textbook definition, you can look in the textbook under inverse property of addition, equal to 0. And then if you were writing algebra, so it's nice to have a couple different ways to define these properties. Words, like right here, numbers, and then algebra would look like this. An A or an X plus a negative A equals 0. So now you have it 3 different ways. You have words, numbers, and algebra. And so I want to show you some example problems so you're done with key information. If you want word for word from the textbook, you can look in the blue or the red textbook. In the blue textbook, let me see if I can add a page. I don't know if I can. Nope. In the blue textbook, I'll just say it out loud, it's page 19. In the red textbook, it's page 79, 80, and part of page 16. So 3 different spots. Alrighty. The example problems I want you to do, I want you to make up your own. So just like I was making up example problems here, I made up an example problem that had 2 positives. Then I made one up that had 2 negatives. And then I made one up that had 1 of each. That's what you're going to do next. You're going to make up 3 problems, and that's what these instructions say. So if you need to pause, please do that. But I wrote out the 3 possibilities. 1 problem with 2 positives, 1 with 2 negatives, use your own numbers, and 1 with a positive and a negative. And then these are the 4 you try problems. Again, it's a little bit of each, very similar, and then some absolute value review thrown in there at the end. Okay.